Hi, and welcome back to this story of art. My name is Karel Huidekoper, and last time I told you about Jupiter and Io, and I showed you this painting, and I'm going to tell you the rest of the story now, but let me retreat for that. You can see here our poor nymph Io, who just happened to be the most beautiful nymph in all of history, who had been seduced, abducted by Jupiter, Zeus, Jupiter, and he took her away to wherever, and then his wife showed up, Juno. Juno, of course, knew what had been going on because she saw her husband leave, and suddenly a cloud descended upon the earth and enveloped this little nymph. So she went over there, and Jupiter heard her coming. And just before she caught him in bed with a nymph, he transformed her into a big white cow. For some reason, being caught with a nymph in bed is a bad thing, and getting caught with a big white cow doesn't raise any eyebrows if you're a Greek-Roman god. You can see here, this is a painting by Pieter Lastman, who just happened to be the teacher of Rembrandt, and it's in London in the National Gallery. Here you see Zeus. He's sitting there almost entirely naked, still embracing this big white cow, and his wife Juno, who appears on her chariot drawn by peacocks. Peacocks are the bird sacred to her. And of course, in the middle there's Cupid. Cupid, who's of course to blame for all of this. He's the one who makes people and gods fall in love. Now Juno, of course, knew this white cow was Io and the next love interest of her husband, and so she made just this small request. She said, "What a beautiful cow! Can I have her?" And of course, Zeus, Jupiter, could not refuse such a small request, and so he gave Io to Juno. Now, Juno gave this white cow to be guarded by her sort of assistant. There's this guy called Argus. Argus was a giant, and he had 100 eyes. In some cases, he had only 4, one for every side of his head. Sometimes he has 8, 2 for every side of his head. And in some cases, as in this one, he had 100 eyes, and he used to, of course, he slept, but never with all of his eyes at the same time. That made him the perfect shepherd. And so he was set to guard Io, and in this painting you can see, it's by Abraham Bloemaert, by the way, you can see that the white cow on the right, that's of course Io, and the man in the middle here with all these sort of weird sort of sores on his head, those sores are supposed to be eyes. He's Argus. Now Jupiter became concerned about Io. He wanted to rescue her. And that's not because he was so deeply in love with her. It's because her parents, who were minor gods, kept nagging about missing their daughter. And they cried so much that it annoyed him, and that's why he wanted to rescue her. So what he did is he sent Mercury. And Mercury was pretty much the go-to guy to fix her for Jupiter. And he went to Argus, and he had to somehow get Io away from him. So what he tried to do is he tried to let him fall asleep. And he did that by playing his flute. And I guess playing lullabies or something. And you can see him here playing his flute. And Argus is falling asleep, but it doesn't work. Every time, just before his last eye is about to close, he opens them up again. So he changes tactics. And Mercury starts to tell him all of history. The history from the start of everything up until their own time. And that apparently is so boring that Argus finally falls asleep. And by letting him fall asleep, Mercury became the god of teachers. Strange people, these Greek and Romans. Anyway, as soon as Argus had fallen asleep, he grabs his sword and cuts off the head of Argus. And you can see that on the far left there's a sword, the hilt of a sword, sort of sticking out. He's already preparing to kill Argus. This is a Dutch painting, but this is a Spanish version by Diego Velázquez. It's in the Prado in Madrid, and I think this is a much more powerful one. Even though Argus is depicted without an unusual amount of eyes, he's of course the guy sleeping. We see the cow. She's not particularly white, but who cares? But we do see Mercury. His flute is on the floor. He's given up on playing his flute, and he sees he's finally gotten Argus to sleep and reaches for his sword and is about to kill him, of course. Now, this is when poor Argus dies, and of course Jupiter can then free Io, make her a nymph again, and return her to her parents. Then of course Juno comes in, and she obviously knows what has happened, and eventually she will forgive Jupiter. But in the meantime, she takes the head of Argus. That's what you see here in this painting by Rubens. It's in the Walraff Richard Museum in Cologne. And she takes his head and plucks out the eyes and throws them into the tail of her peacock. That's how they got these eyes in their tails. You can see there her assistant holding the head, plucking the eyes out, and Juno's actually holding her a handful of eyes there and throwing them in. Now, of course, poor Argus ended up badly through all of this, but so did Io. Io, she was back to being a nymph, but Juno still wanted her revenge, and so she created a gadfly. It's I guess sort of a horsefly or cattle fly or whatever, to follow her around, and all her days she would have a fly buzzing around her head, which I know is annoying, but it must be a lot more annoying if both of you are immortal. And so she would be tormented for all times. Anyway, Zeus ended up being forgiven and went off after his next victim. So far for this story, I'd like to remind you that you can, of course, subscribe to my channel so you can see more of these videos. You can even tick the little bell, and then you'll be notified whenever I have a new video. But for now, I'd like to say thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll see you another time. Bye.